And I recommend that like comic writers think of themselves as just writers. Like Brian K. Vaughan wrote on Lost. Neil Gaiman is writing the Good Omens script. Like these people are not comic writers; they're writers,
Right.
and the secret weapon that we have as writers is our ability to start multiple projects, but then finish like books and novels and work in so many mediums.
So I was looking at your. I've watched you. I've watched your Kickstarter game for years. I recommend anybody looking to venture into Kickstarter or crowdfunding for that matter. Study this man, take a look at his campaign, see what he's done. I noticed anthologies, for you at least, those have been by far the leader in success, like overall back to back each one, and you're consecutively. I think the numbers get better with the last one being about 1,000 backers plus. Well, I did one anthology, and I'm in no rush to do another one. There's so much work involved, so much extra stuff, dedication, time. It's time consuming as all hell. What do you think made you want to go after and start working on anthologies and not just kill one, crush it, 3, 4 consecutive times?
Yeah, so I have a different opinion on anthologies. Anthologies were the thing that really broke my career open. I think my old podcast and the anthology kind of together worked in tandem. I think that generally the best way to go about anthologies or think about anthologies are they are a vehicle to build your perfect fandom and then sell something from the anthology after that anthology. So, for instance, I did Monsters and Other Scary Shit. I'm going to assume I can curse a little bit on here because a lot of my books have shit in it.
Don't worry about it. Shit
So,
is cool.
Monsters and Other Scary Shit. The theory that I had was the thing that I want to do is like tell these like fantasy monster stories, and so if I found a bunch of my friends to make an anthology about monsters, and they all had like little audiences, and they all had like little fandoms here, there, and everywhere. If I brought them all to one place, I could like collect a bunch of like great people, great fans who would then buy my other work. And so you could see that from the book that I did right before this was Katrina Hates the Dead, right before that. The Monsters and Other Scary Shit Kickstarter, and that raised 8,700, and then I did a couple of novels which raised less and less and less, and then I raised Monsters and Other Scary Shit raised $27,000, and then I had a book Pixie Dust, and that book raised $25,000, and it literally made my career. And if you look at the covers, hang on a second.
And that was with Nick Torres, right?
Yes. So this was before Nick Torres was doing a ton of other books, but yeah, I love Nick. Oops. I'll fix that later. Okay, so this is the cover for Monsters and Other Scary Shit, done by Aaron Alexovich. This is the cover for Pixie Dust. So my theory was that if I could draw people who like this cover, they would buy this book. And you can see inside, the art style is very similar. And so I see people all the time doing an anthology with no intention behind it. And that is a lot of work. I mean, even our best anthologies don't make money. There's just so much cost. There's paying so many people, like wrangling so many people. Like I have another editor now for the third Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthology, and it would not work if I didn't have Ichabod to sell off of the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthology. So we basically use Cthulhu is Hard to Spell to collect people who want to see that kind of work, and then we sell them Ichabod after that.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it. So it's kind of the jab, right? The anthologies were, I don't know about the hook in the water or the bait or the jab, setting people up to, and not setting people up in a bad way, but enticing people of a similar mindset to now go back your other books. And I mean, that's a brilliant business concept, and it was implemented. I mean, I said it before, people and I myself have noticed the things you were doing, and I try to implement things where I see that are successful, make note of it, use it further down the line, and that is just, I mean, that's just a brilliant concept. And the proof is in the pudding. It worked, right?
It worked. I've seen it work with other people when I tell them about this. But yeah, an anthology, just to do an anthology, is futile to me.
Well, that's how I got roped into the fourth monkey. I kind of got roped into. I've talked about it a few times out here because I've had several other writers who contributed to that. So I don't want to go into detail about it, but I kind of got roped into it. I took the lead, realized I was going to be the lead now, so I kind of just, once my name was on it, I had to do it. Did it. It wasn't the best process, but I did learn a ton from it. I feel like I leveled up. I feel like I did get eyes out of it, so I could 100% see everything you're talking about. And if I did go at it again, I would certainly gear the theme of the anthology towards, my future books or things that I want to, or fans that I want to gather.
Yeah, it's so, and not only that, but an anthology can do something that I think a graphic novel can't. For instance, until recently, I have not been interested in doing public domain work. But with a Cthulhu book, I'm able to put that on a table and it literally just says Cthulhu. And it is enough to draw people to my table, to my website, and they say Cthulhu, and then they go, oh, look at this. This kind of looks like that. This kind of looks like that. What are these other things? And I've learned the monster anthology on a table at a convention does not sell very well. There's a lot going on. It was great for Kickstarter, and I love it to death. But the Cthulhu book literally draws people to my table, and I literally just have to put it in there and be like, Cthulhu? And they're like, I love Cthulhu. And some people just buy it immediately. When I have two, they'll buy both. But what's really amazing is to see Cthulhu and then Ichabod, because Ichabod was not my best-selling book. It didn't even warrant a sequel, honestly, until we brought Cthulhu to the table, and literally sales doubled. And they'd already doubled before when we had put it into hardcover. So we're talking about selling 4 times the amount that it was selling before by just doing those two things. And it's literally just the interplay between having Cthulhu on the table and then saying people with Cthulhu like dark fantasy, like horror. Ichabod is very much geared towards that. If you look at the covers from them, it's meant to bring in a similar audience, and by having them both on the table, you're now having sort of a virtuous cycle ecosystem that it's Ichabod is Cthulhu is drawing people in, bringing it to Ichabod. Ichabod is then doing that other thing, and then finally. It also gives you a group of creators who, that's what keeps me going day to day to day to day to day. I mean, the fans are amazing, don't get me wrong, but the people that I turn to every day are the creators who I've met and worked with in these anthologies.
Yeah, 100%. It's a mini, maybe not mini, but it's a networking thing as well. I'm still, besides yourself, Madeline, Bob, Sally, Brian Hawkins, tons of people who contributed to the fourth monkey that we did going on 4 years ago at this point. I'm still very close. So there is a bonding when you're in the trenches, so to speak, with something as difficult as putting together an anthology, the constant interaction. You form a really tight friendship. So, and I have seen ever since then more and more anthologies come about, and I feel like you mentioned before, people are catching on or have caught on to the success that you had and how you flipped it and used it to your advantage and are trying to implement that. And I suggest that for everybody. Find what works for you, what doesn't. Take it, run with it, make it your own. Sticking a little bit with Kickstarter, if your bestie was running their first crowdfunding campaign 3 months from now, what would be the number one thing, the number one piece of advice you would give them?
Well, aside from buy my book and buy my course on the subject, that are
right, which I'm sure you go into plenty more detail on.
Absolutely. I mean, the number one thing is to make sure that people know that you're making a campaign, but that's kind of a fallacy because that is the number one tip. But you've really got to get your page right. You've got to have a page that is enticing, that has a first line that's going to hook people in, that's got good rewards, that's got good imagery, and if you have that, then telling people that you're ready is the number one tip. But the number one tip really is go make a book that is worth buying. I see so many creators, and I've I've now gone through like 1,000 Kickstarter books that I've gotten in the past like 10 years through my ebook. I just literally put like 100 onto my Kindle as I'm working out, and then read through all of them. And so I've gone through hundreds of them. And the one thing that I can say consistently is people people seem to cheap out on the art. And I've seen this overall with just art and people talking about it in general. They talk about how they need to make a book and they only have like $500 to make it, and that's such a poor strategy because you are going to have these books forever, and you are going to put your name on these things and show them out. So you need, if you have only $500, maybe you need to make like a 5-page book, or maybe you need to make like a book that is a different style. But you really need to understand that if a book doesn't look amazing, people aren't going to buy it. Some people might buy it just to support you, but if you want to start getting people who just love comics and like want to find something new and don't know you, really it comes down to making an amazing product that people can get excited about. And then all of that other stuff comes into play. But usually when I go to a page and they're like, I told everyone about it, like I've got all these people, it comes down to, I look at the page and like it's somewhere it's bad.
No, it's well said. I think you have to treat a campaign page like you would a pitch to the publisher, your dream publisher. Insert whoever you want it to be. Everything needs to be spot on. The quote unquote log line, the elevator pitch, open sequential pages. I mean, I always recommend to people have a few sequential pages at least. Give people a taste from the full lettering, coloring, everything of what to expect inside the book when they back it. They'll get a feel for your storytelling, the art style, which goes back to your point again, the art style. I guess that's what crowdfunding does, is help the artist or the team afford a quality, an artist to the level of which, that'll meet, I guess, the story that they want to tell. So, what is it? What's the saying? The story gets you in the door, or art gets you in the door. The story keeps you around.
Well, I mean, honestly, we've seen enough Kickstarter. You've probably seen enough Kickstarters to know that it's like art can keep you in the door. Like you can make a terrible book that like has amazing art, and like people will just keep coming back over and over again.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I believe that thing that you just said about like people come for the art and stay for the story. And like that's not to say that if you've only got $1,000 to make your book that you can't make a good book. It's just you're not going to make something that looks like a Marvel book. That looks like an it looks like an Alex Ross book. Like a lot of our books tend to use a much more cartoony art style because generally a more cartoony art style. Besides the fact that that's what I love, more cartoony art style, the artists can turn out more pages quicker, and they're generally cheaper because they don't have to put 500 hours into one page. So it ends up working out for me that because I love that art style anyway, but just being able to combine that sort of more comedic art style, more cartoony art style with the stuff that I do, allowed me to save a lot of money, not cheap out on the art. Just find artists who can do that
storytelling.
Kind of right. And just simply because it takes 8 hours to do a page instead of 20 hours, like it just costs less because those pages were less intensive to draw. Not because they're not great pages, but just because there's less detail and the artist can just turn them around more quickly.
Yeah, 100%. I want to jump into a little bit of kind of, I guess, your writing process. How does your writing process differ from writing comics to writing novels? Very curious about that, if it differs at all.
So writing comics takes me very little time now after writing like 30 books, something like that. So the difference is my day looks the same. Like I get up at 6, I start working at 9, I stop working at 2, I work out, and then I handle like BS stuff from like 5 to 7. That's sort of every day. But what I'm doing when I'm writing a novel is actually like building the world. Like I'm building all of the things both art and writing does. So it would probably be more analogous to what an artist writer does, like what someone who does everything, because like they have to think, okay, I have to get this all the way down, and by the time this page is done, like it has to make sense. Whereas when I'm writing comics, it only has to make sense to the artist. And
Right.
so I'm spending more time building out the framework of the issue and of the series. So if it's 4 issues or 5 issues or 6 issues, however long I'm going to make each arc, or if it's one arc, um, how many pages are in each issue, what each turn is going to be, and so I'm going through and saying panel 1, panel 2, and just writing like a very small bit of action, not even usually dialogue, or probably not even any dialogue at all the first time through until I have the issue. Because for me, comics is much more about timing than novels are. You can do a lot. You can expand or contract a chapter. You can do all sorts of things with novels, but with comics, there's a visual language that everyone uses because you still have a page flip. You still have you still only have the amount of room on a page to tell a story. Whereas for a novel, one chapter could be 10,000 words long if you want. I don't recommend that, but like you could have a 10,000 word chapter, you could have a 500 word chapter. Um, so yeah, it is a lot of, and it's a lot of gut at this point. So like I'll be writing a scene in comics and be like, this needs a turn right now. Like this needs something, or we need to move now. And that's something that I didn't have before. Before I was literally referencing other comics and just saying this comic had this in this and 2 pages in, so like I need to have like a similar thing 2 pages in. And now, because I've just internalized, I've done it for so long, I can kind of feel, okay, it's page 10. We need to have something big happen on page 11. Okay, this is page 5. I try and do it each issue in like 4 segments. I do generally do 20 pages per issue, and so every book will have 4 kind of segments in it, but definitely 2 segments. I don't always get like page 5 or 6 a turn, but I always try and make page 10/11 like picking up the pace again, or changing things, or changing locations.
When you say a turn, I mean, I think you just said it at the end, but when you say a turn, explain that a little bit. Do you mean, like you just said, a change of pace, or yeah, I guess like a complete 180 from what those prior pages were leading up to?
Yeah, so for instance with Ichabod, generally in Ichabod what you'll find is the first 10 pages set up the issue. First 5 to 10 pages set up the issue. And then page somewhere between page 8 and page 12, the monster will appear that they're dealing with that issue. And then the fight will happen between page 12 and the end of that issue. So I'm trying to make sure that you have a chance to take a break, because this is one thing that comic writers don't do often, especially when they're starting out, is they just have action, 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 and then the issue ends. And it's sort of like static over time if you only have action. So I always try and have downtimes after action for people to recover, for people to reset, and then for to go back up with another fight, and then have that be relevant to wherever they end up at the end of that issue. And so it doesn't have to be a turn in the way that like a monster appears. It's easy in Ichabod for me to say that, because it's like it's time for the monster to appear, because every issue basically has a monster.
It's almost episodic, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so therefore,
I think of it like a Saturday morning cartoons, the way I kind of think of it. The setup in the beginning, kind of the whatever you want to call it, exposition or something leading up to first commercial break, but prior to the commercial, the monster appears. Cue the commercial break, pick it up after the commercial with the battle, and so on.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. You know, I also think of things often in TV, and like the commercial breaks are great. Like there's always a stinger at the end of the commercial, right before commercial, to get you to come back from commercial. Like there's always that first fight that they usually fail, and then like they're in this sort of doomed position at the end of the second act as the second commercial, and then the third commercial they kind of solve that issue,
Resolution,
and that
right.
either brings them back to neutral or it gets them on the next path. So
Right.
with Ichabod, their four issues are a volume. So at the end of each issue, they'll be further along in the quest that they need, and then at the end of the fourth issue, it all codifies and solidifies, and they're kind of back to their resting position. So they may be somewhere else, but they'll be in sort of whatever the resting position is,
Right.
so that the next time you can build it back up again. That's how I
Right.
think about it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like each volume is its own roller coaster ride, or a traditional story, a 3-act structure, if you will. It sounds like the end of the third issue is kind of where the climax begins. Fourth issue, we're really hitting the climax, and then resolution all in one issue. And then, you, like you said, you nailed it. Resting point, and then that leads you to volume 2 or 3 or the next volume. That's all.
Yeah, so what I want people to be able to do at the end of a volume is to say, "Oh, that's nice," but still leave enough of something left undone that they
Yeah.
have to go in the end of the next. They have to go to the next volume to
So
see.
do you literally leave it like an unsolved like little bit, maybe a tidbit about a character or something that people want to find out next issue or next volume?
It depends. So the 4 volumes of Ichabod that are going to exist, we just finished the 4th volume, are like work as one story with 4 different parts, and so at the end, like the end of each volume doesn't resolve the story. So it will have resolved that thing. So I like to think of it as Lost. I know people have strong feelings about Lost, but Lost was great in this way. At the end of each season, at the beginning of each season, a bad thing was introduced. They spend that season overcoming that bad thing, and then that bad thing becomes normalized. And then a bigger, badder thing comes in the next season, and it kind of works that way. For better or worse, that is sort of how the whole series worked, and it makes me, that's what got me thinking about how I structure Ichabod specifically, because each volume is like one season of television, and then there's a satisfying enough resolution, but like you still gotta come back for
Right, there's
season
that
2.
background, I guess the A plot, right? The main something in the background that you want to see through to the end.
Right.
Like, for better or worse, the main boss still wasn't defeated, but one of his sub bosses were defeated in volume 1.
Right, the whole story of Lost over 6 seasons was like, how do they get off the island, and they changed things in the middle, but like that was kind of and so they didn't get off the island at the end of the first season, but I think if I remember correctly, like there was a hatch that they had to blow, and they finally blew the hatch.
Yeah,
but
and
and they were like,
they're there.
I think
They're
at the
gonna
end
get
of the
there.
thing, they were just literally looking down at the darkness, and
I think so.
then it
Or
ended.
the ladder, fade to black, and then it was
Right.
over.
Yeah, and so like
every
that was
season
it.
it's how the
That's
hell are they going to get off the island? But then,
Right.
like you mentioned, there's little subplots that kind of satisfy
Right.
you at the end.
right, and and all of the character resolutions kind of all culminated at the hatch, at the end of that last episode. Like all of the guys who were fighting and all of the people, like they all kind of all were there at the end, and so you're like, okay, I've had all of these people all over the place, all over the island. They're fighting with each other. They all kind of resolve themselves around like this hatch, which is finally going to give them the answers, and then the season ends. So it is satisfying in so much as all of the character problems resolve themselves. All of the people who were introduced in that season kind of resolved themselves and kind of integrated themselves into the lost cabal of people. But the overarching plot of, oh my god, now there's a whole thing, what is down in that bunker, was not resolved. And it's a tough tightrope when you're doing something that is serialized in the way that Ichabod and the Sieg and Spindle saga is, because you have the things you introduce at the beginning of a book or the beginning of a volume need to be resolved enough that people say, oh, there was an arc there. But Also, not so much that they don't want to read the next volume, or they're like that they're satisfied enough to stop.
Right. Right. I was going to use that word. They need to be satisfied at the end, right?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of my wife was and I were watching Arrow. The season 3 break. This was like 10 years ago, so I'm just gonna like Felicity and Arrow get together, and they drive off into the sunset, and my wife goes, "All right, this show's done." I was like, "No, this is like 5 years." Nope, nope, nope. I know bad stuff's gonna happen to them in the future. I don't care. It's over, and you kind of don't want that to ever happen. You don't want someone to be able to be like, this is my resolution point, even if there's 10 more seasons or 10 more books, 10 more issues that you have to go. But you have to give them that resolution while still
Introduce
saying,
a little
oh,
hook.
yeah, oh, I've gotten now there's other things happening that I'm interested in.
Right. Right. It might be cliche, but the bad guy, his hand pops out of the rubble and then cut to black. Right.
Right.
All right. He's not dead. We have to deal with him in season 2, but we got enough of an ending in season 1 to be satisfied.
Exactly.
Do you prefer? Do you have a preference? I guess creatively, prose versus comics.
So, so I love comics. This is a comics writing show, so I should say comics. But
No. Don't
the
feel
problem with
obliged.
comics is I don't draw them, and so I give up so much control. As a writer, you have to be very, very comfortable with ceding control to other people, and understanding that it might be a year, it might be 2 years. We talked about Nick. Nick is wonderful, and he drew the heck out of Pixie Dust. But in the middle of drawing it, like he got carpal tunnel in his hand, and literally for 6 months couldn't draw. It's like that was not him. So people always think like, oh, well, like the artist is going to lose interest, or like I'm going to run out of money. But as often as not, it's just some random thing happens. For instance, and the first volume of Ichabod, literally Buenos Aires was having brownouts for like a year, and so like sometimes Renzo would just go away for 3 months, and I would not hear from him. And then other times I would send an email to his old email address and not his new email address, and so we would just not get it. So it's not only like, oh, I'm going to run out of money or the artist is going to lose interest. Sometimes it is life happens, and there are so many variables that the minute that you sign the contract, really, and you're one issue in, I'm going to say one issue in, because before you're an issue in, you can kind of jettison if you have to, like especially the first 10 pages. Like I usually use the first 10 pages as like, is this really going to work? Can we get to the place we need to? And if it is, then I'm like, oh crap, now I'm committed to like doing the whole 80, 90, 100 pages that I have. But and the power that an artist has is so incredible over you while you're doing the book, because you want to make them, and rightfully so, like, they're getting paid to like make your baby and like make your thing. But like with novels, it is all you. Like it is so much harder, and it is so much more intense for you. But by the end of it, you have an editor and a proofreader, which you also have on a comic, probably. You should at least have a proofreader on a comic, hopefully, if not like an editor. But once you're done the novel, it's like done. You're like, here's the finished piece. Like, even if I die now, like it could be a thing. Like someone could put it out there, and like it would not maybe be my perfect work, because like the editors or whatever, my wife would be like changing things, and I wouldn't be. But it's finished, and so the person who likes control in me prefers prose. The person who likes collaboration in me likes comics. But if I had to pick one, I would do prose, simply because A, I'm quite good at prose. B, like it is a thing that I that is so hard that it never gets easier. I've never written a book and had it be easy the next time. It is always equally hard every time. Comics, after a certain point, I have found that like it's about putting the pieces in place, like a director putting the pieces in place, and like it's still very hard. But once you say, okay, artist, here's your commencement paperwork and here's your signature on your contract, like it's mostly in their hands.
Yeah, yeah, it's out of there. It's out of your hands at that point, 100%. Once you let the script go out the door.
Yeah, and that's why it is so important to find the right artist. It is so important to not risk your book just hiring an artist because they happen to be $50 a page or $100 a page, or like they're your friend. It's so important. A director once said, once you've hired the actors, the job is 80% done. And it's true, because once you've put the people in place to do the work and hired the cinematographer and all the other people, like, your job is to just coordinate everything together. And in the same way, so is making a comic. Like, your job is to find the right artist. Like, there should be such an outmoded part of you that is about finding the artist, that you could just, and I often do, just look for the artist, and then the story follows.
Yeah, I learned a lot of that the hard way. In that, I think a lot of new writers do. Like, how did you find your first artist? I remember I went to DeviantArt, and I had to find a few folks, and I actually had folks disappear after 10 or some odd pages. I had one guy disappear after I made the fatal mistake of writing, an epic graphic novel for my first work after 40 pages of art. So I had 40 pages of inked product with, an incomplete story. The pacing, everything was bad to begin with. Excuse me, but now the artist is gone. I can't get in touch with them. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for finding an artist who's has the vision and who is able to be professional enough to complete the work, which is hard to do in the beginning. In the beginning, I guess you're looking on, at least I was looking on forums. I didn't have the social network that I do now of people that I've met on Twitter, Facebook. So now I can just, go to my friends list and find folks or find people who've worked with other people. Like Nick and I are doing something now. And it's just because I've seen people can complete work professionally and at least get something done, and that goes a long way. Even for writers, getting something done, even if it's small, is just going to be a little piece of portfolio, something in your backpack to show folks that, hey, I can tell a story even if it's only 4 pages. It's my first story. Next time I'll do an 8-page one, and just slowly build your portfolio and your style from there. Yeah. That's the only way to get better.
To go back to what we were talking about in anthologies, like, that's the reason to be in anthologies. Like, that's the reason to find them. That's the reason to join anthology groups and to
my first
do them
anthology,
all.
Right? My first story that was ever published was a short. It was in an anthology.
Yeah, and like, I had the opposite thing, whereas like, I really wanted to be an anthologist, but no one would hire me until I made my own anthology. And then the nice thing about making the own anthology is like, you have sort of a coaching tree, whereas like, anyone who's in that anthology and does an anthology, like, they come to me and they're like, you want to be in this anthology? And I'm like, yes, sure, that would be great, but it allows me to try different styles and tones, work with different artists on a low risk basis, try out people, see if we vibe well together, and that is even if you're making an anthology just for you. You can make an anthology. I have friends who make anthologies for the universes, and they're like, right. I just got hired to write something for my friend Andrew's anthology, and it's like a 5-10 pieces that he's going to be in this book, and they're all like 5 pages, and it's going to be just set in his universe, Rumrow, and that is that. And even if you're just doing it for yourself, it behooves you to say, okay, I don't want to do an 80-page story first, because I don't know what kind of art I like. I don't know what kind of thing I like to write. I don't have a voice. So just doing different pieces, whether they're connected or unconnected, and saying, this is really what I like. This is what I don't like. This is how I like to communicate. This is an artist that I really want to work with again, and this is one that I never want to work with again.
Yeah, when you're just starting out, especially, little things like that help you format your script too. I just put something together for my website about how I format my scripts now, and if I look at how I formatted scripts 10 years ago, god awful, night and day. But you learn by doing, right? Rinse and repeat, keep doing it, take and borrow, steal from other scripts that you see online, and just in the collaboration too. The artists or letterers or editors I've worked with will tell me, all right, this doesn't work, or maybe highlight or bolden your panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, make that bold, put the number of panels that you're going to have on a particular page at the top, alongside the page number. Like, these are things that I built over time. And I think, kind of to your point, right, when you're just starting out, you got to find your voice, learn how to write proper scripts, learn how to format the scripts. There's a lot there's a lot to learn when you're first starting out.
Well, and there's another thing that you learn is how to write for an artist.
Right.
So I work with Angela Odling a lot, and the way that I write for her is very different than how I write for Nick, or how I write for Eric, or how I write for Camry. Like, I know the kinds of things that they like. And for Angela, it's small moments. She's really great at these like small comedic moments and like making them have a lot of heart. And so I do when I write for her, or when I write a piece, I'm like, Angela, this is for Angela. And when I write like a big high octane like super funny piece, like, it's for Nick. And Eric's somewhere in the middle there, and he likes like big panels and like really expressive, or like really expressive worlds. And the more artists you can work with, the more you see how to not just write well, but write for them. Because an artist will, just like an actor or anyone else, they will have their strengths, but also not just strengths, but just things they like their influences are going to change what you write. And the more you can understand that process by working with a lot of them, the more you become a better writer. And you start hiring better also, because I'm not hiring Angela to do like a big bad like fight sequence. It's not going to do it. It would not look good. But like there's so many things that Angela is amazing at that oftentimes you'll find an artist and you'll just sit on them for years. I like Camry for our new book, Black Market Heroine. I met her 2-3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. But I was like, I gotta work with this person. Like, I gotta work with her. I gotta work with her. And it was just like it was. We tried a couple of times. Like, I had an idea, and I was like, I don't really like this enough to do it, or this is really good idea. And so finally, I had it all come together. And so so yeah, I think that. I don't even know where I was going with that statement. I just know it's about finding the right artist, and like artists have different tones and styles and things that work for them.
Right. And you definitely develop a shorthand when you're working with somebody multiple times. And I've seen Angela's work. I love her work. I think she's doing a webtoons thing with my editor and letterer, Chaz Pangburn, who I've used probably in several consecutive projects now. And then also a point you brought up was the more, I guess, seasoned you get, you can spot artists or keep them, say, in your back pocket, folks you want to work with. Like, I'm working with a guy now, Paul Gorey, who has a very anime influenced style.
I love Paul. I really wanted to work with him.
I have like a piece back there. Just his color. He's actually doing the marker coloring, so he's inking and coloring this project we're going to pitch. But to your point, like you said, piggybacking off of I've kept Paul, him and I have been wanting to work together for a while. I just haven't had a project come into mind until I came up with this project called Multiverses, and it's just a wild sci-fi multiverse kind of Highlander meets The One style, Rick and Morty, going from one planet to the next, just high octane, like you mentioned. And he's really good at that type of artwork. And
it's funny you say that.
Tremendous.
Because I've done the same. I've gone to Paul like every project that I've done and been like, hey, can like we work together on this? Like, is this a thing? Like, can we do this thing? And I haven't found a way to like work with, but like I love, and I've done this with dozens of artists, and like right. Over the years, like, is this the project? Is this the one? Like, I really want to work with you. I find that it is better for me and more fun for me if I find the artist first. Like, or if I have like, because I always have a bunch of ideas. Like, one thing as a writer, you're never like bereft of ideas. Right. And it's really about marrying the
whether good or bad.
Right. Yes. It's about marrying the artist with the idea. And so I find that I have a bunch of ideas and I just put them aside, and then I'm looking at an artist and I'm like following them, and sometimes they're not good enough. Like, you're just like, a lot of times you're just like, they're so close. Like, they just need to make like this break. Like, these, like, give it a year or give it 6 months, and like they're gonna do it. And sometimes it's like they come into an anthology of mine, and like Angela was one who, if you look at her work from the first anthology we did to the second anthology that we did, that she was part of, like, it's night and day. Like, her style completely developed, and And so a lot of it is saying, man, that would be really great if they develop in this way, they develop in that way, and like it's not like I'm pushing them to develop in a way, in a specific way for my needs. It's just like I'm just following it along, and like I'm becoming friends with these people.
Well, you know what they can do, right? You know what they're capable of. You know that they put their head down and they grind, and they're going to get to that place where you see them. You know it's inevitable for someone like Nick or Paul or Angela to break through and just kill it at that particular style. But 5 years back, just like us as writers, we weren't as developed then. So yeah. I see your point completely.
Yeah, I have a habit of hiring artists like right before they break. So I did it with Nick. I told Nick before he did it. I was like, Nick, you're gonna like your life's never gonna be the same after Pixie Dust, because like not just because like the book's gonna be good and like art, but like I know so many creators that like they're just gonna like
well,
Angela.
Style.
Yeah, Angela was another one. And like now. And Juan Frigeri, who is my artist for Katrina Hates the Dead, like he went on to work. He works for Marvel now. He during the middle of the book, he started working on Star Wars, when Dark Horse owned the license. And like I believe strongly that like Camry is another one of those. When like people see Camry's work, she's going to get just like explode in popularity and people who want to work with her, because it's so good. And that for me, for comics, is like the best part of it. Best part of it is be like, oh, you guys know each other, now you're working together. Like that's amazing. And like I'm glad I could have a tiny minuscule part of that thing. Like it's your talent. And so I end up finding a lot of artists who are on the cusp, and then being like, okay, like let's work on this project. Like let's get you the rest of the way there. And then like they get there and I'm like, oh, awesome. Like you now Nick's everywhere. Like Angela's
Don't
everywhere.
Forget about me.
Right, exactly. Like Juan's everywhere. Like these artists. Renzo had a career before me, so I can't take credit for Renzo's stuff. But yeah, I mean, and that is another great thing about comics, but also terrible thing about comics, because your artists will often get to a place where you can't pay their page rate. And like
or they're too busy.
They're too busy, or like they can get to it in a year, or like there's all of these things that like as a novelist, I can take my career into my own hands. Like if I have time, I can write a book. That book may be good or bad, but like it is mine to do, and it has been very helpful over the past several years as I've been working on comics. And comics get delayed, problems happen. Just literally making a comic takes a long time because the artist has to draw it. So you start a comic, and I don't have multiple comics in production usually at the same time. I did just recently, but it was a nightmare to have both in production, to Ichabod and Black Market Heroine in the same time. So having the novels, I'm able to take to do whatever I want. Like it will take as long as I take, not as long as the artist takes, as long as I take to make it. And I recommend that like comic writers think of themselves as just writers. Like Brian K. Vaughan wrote on Lost. Neil Gaiman is writing. Wrote the Good Omens script. Like these people are not comic writers; they're writers, and the secret weapon that we have as writers is our ability to start multiple projects, but then finish like books and novels and work in so many mediums.
Yeah, no, I consider myself a storyteller, which might be corny, but deep down, that's what I consider myself. I mean, most of my scripts or my comics are, so I kind of outline, or I write my outlines as a short story type of version. I'm not writing just the beats. I'll do that prior to jumping into the script, but my outline at first, I just handwrite. I just jot things down. I'll do a brainstorming phase first, right, which might take months, if not years, where I'm just writing little notes on paper or in a specific book that I'll get back to when I think it's fleshed out enough that I can put it together in an outline. And then when I write the outline, I kind of connect the dots and put it into some sort of a format that more or less is going to be the finished product. And it's a short story. I mean, it's a very rough short story. It's not complete. It's not something I would ever publish. But it's enough that it fleshes it out for me. So then I take that and I turn that into a script. But the most fun for me is when I write that outline and I'm free flowing, what is the stream of consciousness kicks in, and I just zen out and I nail a page or I nail a scene, and I'll
Yeah.
just freaking mic drop or pen drop and walk away. I might, I'll revisit it in a week or so. I just let it sit, and I'm creatively satisfied for a week.
Yeah, I do kind of the opposite because Katrina, Pixie Dust, and Black Market Heroine are all parts of novels now.
Nice.
So Black Market Heroine, I wrote the script, and then I realized it became four novels that I grew out of that one comic book script. So my stuff is very much like transmedia now because I have seven, which will be 11 novels in the Godsverse Chronicles come January, and now we have two, and it will be three graphic novels that are out in that universe too.
That's beautiful, man. That's awesome. Congratulations. That's a feat. You've got to compete with Natalie Holly Rosing for the most mediums and get an audio drama next. Because
I'm looking. I'm trying.
I
It's
bet,
very.
man. I bet.
It's
Is that the
very.
cards?
Well, the thing is, Madeline is very good at sticking to her universe. I'm not so good. I'm not
she's
so
fleshing
good
it
at like
out.
sticking. Yeah, I'm not so good at sticking to
I'm
one.
the same way.
Like,
I gotta jump around. Like, how's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
pain?
I've written 10 books in the Obsidian Spindle Saga, which is a different universe. I've written like 30 some odd books. Ichabod is the longest single series that I've ever done with 16 issues, and that only came about very late in my career. So yeah, Madeline is amazing, and like everything that she does builds on the one thing. She reminds me of back in the day when Bob Sally was doing Salvagers, and before he moved on to do a bunch of stuff. Like he spent so much time just building Salvagers, and like that was the thing that like everything came back to.
Right. Right.
And I
Yeah,
think
spin-offs.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
the
did.
one
Well, he
underlying
also had that like
series.
those puppets at the shows, and like he just like the whole
Yeah.
thing just kind of revolved around Salvagers, and it was amazing to watch because like then I think there was a board game, and he's got the Starlight Tavern
Did
thing.
he do a board game?
I don't know if it ever came out. I thought that he
I wouldn't doubt
announced
it.
at one time.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That wouldn't surprise me because he stuck with the Salvagers universe for years, and there's something to be said with that. Sticking to that and building a fan base off of that who will love that product, but then follow you to to your next series.
Yeah, well, also was the product that so what I've learned as a writer in the recent past is that you need to make it easy for your fans to talk about your work, and I have not done that historically in the past. Of like I bump around a lot, and I like people ask me like what book should I send people to if before like when like I'm telling people about your work, and I'm like I don't know, there's like 20 of them, and there's something to be said about having like a big long chunky series that you can just say that one, like go to Salvagers, or like go to Ogres, or go to Godsverse Chronicles, or go to the Obsidian Spindle Saga, or like whatever it is, like it's the thing that defines you as a creator, but also has enough meat in it that if someone goes to and likes like the Godsverse Chronicles, like they could spend a hefty amount of money getting all of it. Because when when Ichabod was 4 issues, it's like, okay, that's $20-$30. Like that's not a ton of money when like someone goes to the series, they buy the one and then it's over. I want people to like come back to it and keep talking about it and keep and also give me a reason to keep making more of them. So the longer the series is, if you look behind me, you can see like like that on a shelf is like one series of mine. So like no one's gonna if they get all of these books, no one's gonna forget. Like no one's gonna forget that like Russell Nohelty wrote this. Like it's not gonna get lost on a shelf. And soon there'll be like 4 more books. So you're talking about having like this much shelf space for like one series, and that seems to be maybe not in comics because I made my living in comics well before I had any of these series, but in prose for sure. Like if you don't have a long series, it's going to be really hard for you to have a long career.
Oh, it's interesting. But that's a good point. I mean, having that focal point or that chunky enough, quality enough series that people to have people introduced to you. I only have one series, 6 issues that was put out by Scout. Several years back, I signed another series which is just about done, but we had issues, and it goes back to what we were talking about before. The artist I was working with, he started working with Cartoon Network, so obviously, my book and our collaboration is put to the side, which, it's a no-brainer, right? I completely understand, but comics take time, and so I guess you have to go through the years and the work and produce things to have multiple series to get those hooks in readers. So one series I don't think quite does it, because if they enjoy that series, what do you have to send them to next? So you have to continuously pump things out, and it's it's cliche, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, so you have to stick with it. And I think so many people bail out early on. I mean, for so many different reasons, right? I could have bailed out when that artist flaked on me after 40 pages, and now I'm in the hole, whatever, a couple grand. It's there's so many reasons to leave. I mean, did you ever have a fork in the road moment where you
like always
could have or wanted to split? Is it every other day, or?
I think it's not so much now, but
right.
But back in 2019, I had written 4 of these books, the God's First Chronicles books, and I released them not on Kickstarter but on Amazon, and they did so bad that I was like, "This is it! Like this is it! This is my career!
Yeah.
Like this is the end of my career! Like this is." And it took a long time for me. I mean, I was like suicidal. Like it was so bad. Like it was real bad. Like I'd spent so much money on this series, and it did so badly that like I was like, I'm never literally. There's no way I can pull myself out of this hole with this series ever. And it took like redesigning it, and that's why there's more Ichabod. That's why there's more Cthulhu. That's why we released the God's Verse Chronicles on Kickstarter, because like I decided to go back to my main series and start doing the things that I had seen people do, which is like almost all successful authors have a long series. All of your favorite comic book creators have a series that they've done that's a long running series. Almost all, I mean, it would be hard for me to believe that, like, I mean, I love Jonah Vasquez, and he only did 6 issues of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, but then he did Squee, he did some other stuff in that universe. But it's hard, like, you need to be continually be in the consciousness of your fans, to like embed yourself there. You have, and that means often coming back to a project often enough that yearly or twice a year or once every other year at least, so that they can say, oh yes, this is a thing that I like. And that is why a series is so valuable, because every new installment of that series is more money. Like they now are buying 5 books. New people are buying 5 books, and all the people who like the series are buying the 5th book. So, or they're buying book 1, or they're buying book 1 and 2, and like that happens all the time with Ichabod. But I spent a long time putting out all these different books and products, and every one was like literally a struggle to build the audience a second time. I had to build it every single time, and now I feel a little bit more confident doing shorter series. But now I don't want to, because I understand that like by the time that the God's Verse wraps up in January, we'll have done 3 novel launches, 3 graphic novel launches over the past six and a half years. So that's a huge amount of time to be burrowed into people's brain, to be able to be back and be like, hey, remember you liked that series? Here's more. Remember you liked that series? Here's more. Remember you liked that series? Here's more. And just lumping it in or doing it for a 6-month run or it's hard. It's hard. And it's hard to then say, okay, I have to spend so much money on this series to get it to a place that it is successful. Or I could go back to this series that is already successful and just drop another book in that. And yes, you have to look. It's just a lot of times series will like peter out and then like fall back down, and that's a time to stop a series. Sometimes your interest will wane. It's time to stop a series. But every time you release something in that series, it's a chance to literally sell your entire back catalog to new and old people. Because there's a lot of people that'll say, "Oh yeah, I read the first 2 volumes, but I didn't read the next 2," or like, "Oh, I did this. I have these 3 books, but not these 6." And so like they end up filling out their collection with stuff. And also it gives more chances for books to get in other people's hands, or books to go into a thrift store and be like, oh, there's book 4 of the Obsidian Spindle Saga. Well, where are the first 3 books? And all of those things happen with series in a way that they don't happen with standalones.
Yeah, all this is making me want to get back into the Writing the Wretches universe, because we did really good with Volume 1 on Kickstarter, and then when Scout put it out, it was well received. But I think part of me, I mean, just part of me, I don't want to say regrets, but I have a few other series that are going to be coming out before or next. So part of me wishes that either A, I stuck with that and kept hitting that, but then the creative side of me, not that I wouldn't have been creative if I continued the series, but part of me just wanted to explore these other crazy stories that I'm working on. One of them is with the actor Aeneas, who went off to do Cartoon Network work that I mentioned before, but it is a Dr. Seuss meets Sin City crime noir, equipped with like rhyming pentameter, rhyming narrative, the whole 9 yards. And it's creatively, I mean, that thing, I cannot wait for that to come out. But building that fan base and that Wretches universe had to go on the back burner in order for me to do that. So I guess it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, and I can certainly see it your way.
Yeah, I spent my first part of my career saying I don't want to do series, and the second part of my career saying I only want to do series. So I get it. I mean, I think it's so. What's hard at the beginning of your career is to know what kind of writer you want to be, know what kind of series you want to tell, know what kind of thing will light you up for like 20 issues or 100 issues or whatever. And like, I think Ichabod is a testament to like my ability to change focus, but like it's not the series that like I had to design that series much differently when it became a series and when we did 16 issues than I did when it was only 4. And it was much more like confined horror, like body horror-y kind of like stuff and like eviscerations. It just became different when it was a series because those are the things that interest me. And when I went to make the Godsverse Chronicles, the first book, Katrina Hates the Dead, is great. But like I think I found the style that I really like with Nick and Pixie Dust, and then I continue it with Black Market Heroine with this. And now when I'm designing the Obsidian Spindle Saga and future series, like I know the things that will keep me interested for like a bunch of issues. I know that they're going to have these 5 things. Like there's going to have to be mythology, probably fairy tales, and magic and monsters. Like I know that those things are going to have they can't not be there, and that the world has. I also know how to create a world that is big enough to span a bunch of issues. And I learned that from Pat Chan, who I know is on your show, from Destiny New York. Like the way that he built that world from the beginning was big enough. And a lot of times with Katrina, when I went to do a series of the Godsverse Chronicles, like I had to literally build, like fill in a universe that I had never designed. And so now I think I'm much better at saying, what are all of the conflicts in this world? Like how do I make it interesting? Like how, yep. Like and you just don't know that. So you don't know that when you're starting your career or you're doing your first thing. So I don't know if a series is good. Probably is not, unless you luck out and you just know what you love writing and then you hit it out of the park. Like you probably shouldn't make your first thing the series. Maybe not even the 10th thing the series that you do, because you don't know what kind of writer you are. And it takes a lot of writing, it takes a lot of creating comics, novels, movies, whatever, to know these are the things I like. These are the things that will sustain me on the marathon that is the series for whatever the length is, and whether that's time with novels or it's money with comics. Like what is going to sustain me to continue to make this series? Like what elements have to exist?
That's well said. What would, if you had to give one tip to a new writer, aside from every other tip we've given so far, what comes to mind? What do you think?
Write everything. Just do not say I like writing this and I don't like writing this. Like try every single kind of thing. Try writing comedy, try writing drama, try writing sex scenes, try writing romance. So many people that I know, especially male writers, are like, ugh, I hate romance. But like, dude, romance sells. Like, and romance is in everything. So like, learn how to write it. I'm not saying you have to write a romance book. I'm not saying you have to write, a romantic comedy that has to be your thing. But like, you need to know how to write romance. Just like you need to know how to write action and conflict. Like it doesn't matter what you write. Like if someone really wanted to write romance, I would tell them write a thriller, because like you need to know how to pace. Like you know how to pace things, and you need to know how to create conflict. And even if you're not punching people romance, like banter is all about like jabs and hooks and crosses and all of that stuff that you learn writing action. So when I started, I wrote thriller, I wrote like indie, I wrote romantic comedies, I wrote horror, I wrote sci-fi, I wrote everything, and I tried to write them as quickly as I possibly could and see if I liked them. And I was surprised at how much I liked certain things and how much I didn't like things I thought I would enjoy. And so you really have to dabble in everything when you first get started, because there's this whole part in the career, and I don't know how much you talk about, like I talk about the business part of it, like making money a lot, like the actual like from I have a thing to making the money on it and making a career, and that makes people, I think that I discount the first part. But the first part is the most important part. I have a book called How to Build Your Creative Career, which is like the first part is making great content, and if you can't make something great, then none of the other stuff matters. And the way you make stuff great is by dabbling in playing. And like that's the great part about school, is school allows you to, in a structured, safe environment, play and decide what you like and decide what you don't like. And if you don't get that in school, you have to build it for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Writing, I mean, I've never written romance, but it wasn't a decision to not write it. But writing a slow-paced scene dramatically and building the tension, I mean, that's something, to me, that's kind of what the heart of a romantic scene would be. The tension between two characters, and building that is certainly a good test or something for new writers to try and do, along with the action. Like, don't just because you love reading and watching action flicks, doesn't mean that that's all you need to know how to write.
Well, the thing about action flicks is there's almost always romance in them. There's always like a girl or a boy who has to be saved, or like there's a aromantic, like familial love. There's always like some love that's going on, but more importantly, like action takes up very little, even in action movies. Most scenes, most sequences are two characters talking to each other. Like they are not bang bang, and they're not bang bang shoot 'em up. There's tension that's built through like espionage and like whatever the thing is. But like most scenes that you will ever write as a writer are two people walk into a room and talk.
And you have to know how to build that character development, and pull that empathy in. You have to know how to make the reader relate to it and say, oh, I can see myself in that situation, or I've been in something like that, or I can see why he's thinking that way at the drop of a dime.
Yeah. And one of the ways you learn how these different characters act is you put people in different situations. Like what happens if you drop two people in a romantic comedy? What happens if you drop them into an action scene? What happens if you drop them into all of these places? But most things, if you watch James Bond, it's like things building tension, like big action scene, and then another like 10 minutes of building tension before there's another action scene. So I mean, you talk about Black Widow. Black Widow was mostly about her family, and then with parts of action, and same with Loki, and same with like WandaVision. All these things come down to the relationships that you build, and I think you learn them best, honestly, writing romance, because like that is like you don't have much, and the reason is you don't have much. Like you've got two people in a small town, and the only tension is will they fall in love and how. Like there is always the little like, will my bakery live, or like will my bakery die, or like whatever the thing, whatever like the overarching tension of, but it's like very small, and like if you can make like two people falling in love in small town America like compelling and interesting, like you can pretty much do anything else, because that
you
is.
Can't use.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't use. Sorry to cut you off. Like an action scene, you can't use the aliens are landing in the midst of all this. I can't escape to that as a crutch, to get away from writing the tension and building and fleshing these characters out.
Yeah,
or even writing a play. A play with two characters sitting on stage, like a short. Yeah. What is it?
Waiting for Godot.
Is it a screenplay when you write a play? It's called a screenplay.
It's just a play.
Just a play. You write the play. They put on the play. But yeah, writing a play, two characters hashing it out. I mean, you learn a lot through that.
Yeah, and you'll learn that most action, like just open the first book that you can find anywhere and just look at how much of it is action and how much of it is drama
Right.
and building up to the action. And once you know how to build those characters and have two people together, then like you can always fall back on it. Because like I actually don't like writing action scenes. I think they're boring. Like they and like every time whenever it's two characters talking to each other, I'm like, cool, like I can do that. Like I can make that interesting.
Yeah.
Like when it's not less in comics, more in novels, but like when it's just two people fighting, like it's so hard to like make that interesting
Yeah.
in any way that will make you care unless you've done the work to
You have to
build
earn
up
it.
those two people beforehand. Like the only reason you
Mm-hmm.
care if this person survives like the attack, maybe well one probably because you're not a sociopath and like you just want people to but like it's because you fell in love with them, but you fell in love with them by the actions that they took and the words that they said. So
Yeah. Yeah,
so
they have
yeah.
to earn that fight scene. They have to earn you giving a shit whether or not they die in the fight.
Right, and
Right?
you have to, and the reader also has to earn it. Like
Right.
this is something that like the writer has to earn the fight scene, has to earn the big emotional payoff, but the reader also has to earn it, and it's way more important that the reader earns it. So
Right, right. That's
always
what I meant.
yeah, always err on the side of the reader hasn't earned it yet.
Yeah, yeah. I think working with an editor took my game to a whole nother level. Aside from running the Fourth Monkey a couple of years back, but bringing Chaz on in Wretches #2. I think after the second Kickstarter we did for it, bringing him on just took my game to another level. Where I think he pointed that out. There was something going on. I think it might have been somewhere in the middle. There was something that wasn't earned. Maybe it was a character turn. I can't remember what it was. But he pointed that out to me, and I just it just a switch kind of flicked in me, like okay, and now I'm always looking for that moment and making sure anything you're writing needs to be earned, it needs to be set up. So yeah, 100%. When it comes to action scenes, I mean, I keep mine minimal, a couple of pages an issue, if that, but it needs to build up to that, or it's going to start off the issue with that, and then the rest might explain it. Depends on what the story, what the pacing is in that particular issue, but totally you must earn these emotional moments.
Yeah, and my books are mostly with gods, and so like they can do anything, and so like it's really important for me to make sure that they only like can use those moments very very sporadically.
Right.
Those like Deus Ex Machinas, and usually when they use them,
Right.
it's like way after it's been earned or something has happened. So yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would tell you is like if you're a new writer, like just write all the things and read all of the things. Like
Right.
like please do not be the writer who says I don't read, because like I'm going to tell you flat out, it means you're a bad writer. Like it means you're a bad writer. If you're not a reader, you're a bad writer. Like it's just that's just how it is. Like I will like I've met two writers in my life who buck that trend, but you cannot know what is good writing if you're not reading what is good writing and reading what is bad writing also, because you'll learn so much from the bad writing. But like if you don't have a stack of comics, if you're not on Kickstarter like backing books and seeing where the market is and saying also like I can do better than this, or like wow, like this
That's
is the
great.
this is the bar for
Right.
I came to Los Angeles in 2008, and I looked around at the meetups I went to, and I thought I was like hot shit. Like from like I made a movie, like I'd done all this stuff. And I came to LA, and I was like, oh my god, like these real creators live here. Like the ones that are making like King Kong, and like the ones who are making like these are the people that, and like my dentist is like made a better movie than my movie, and like so like I need to step it up, and I need to like get to the next level or 10 levels up real quick, or like I'm gonna burn out here. And sometimes that competition or that level of
That
like
humbling.
fear, yeah, like it
Being
like helps
humbled,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then the opposite of being humbled is, like you said, reading a shit book and knowing, all right, this was published. I can do better than this. I can take a stab at it. I think I
yeah,
still have a book somewhere where I don't even know. It might have been a small press publisher that put it out, a comic book and a novel, and they were just dog shit. And that kind of helped me years back. I guess have the confidence to go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try, amongst other things. But reading good work, and then also at the same side, the other side of that coin, reading bad work just certainly helped.
Yeah, reading good work, it's really hard. It's a really hard skill to understand how they pull their punches, or like where the seams are, because like the books are so good because like you can't tell where the seams are. Like they just
where the setups are. Or
and bad books are great because like they telegraph everything. You're just like, oh, okay, like this is what they're trying to do, and especially when you're first starting out, like just looking at it and saying, because they usually just like look at another book and like they will copy like the thing, and you're like, oh, I see it, I see the telegraph, I see you're gonna pull the punch right here, and so it's. For me, it's important to see what the best people are doing. Like, look, if you're only gonna pick one, like read what the best comics are. Like, read the best ones, read the most popular ones, read the ones that are killing it on Kickstarter. Like, go back all of that stuff and go to your comic book shop and do all of that stuff. But like, then go to if you have money left, like go to the 50-cent bin, go to the bargain bin, and just like pull. Like, I would just literally pull a stack of books, like from like the 25-cent bin, and just like, when I first started, it was like these are $10. And they're like, yeah, it's like they're not very good. And I'm like, I have $10. Like I can get all of these books, or I could get like one of these really good books. I was like, I'm going to take all of these and just like mainline mediocre books. And sometimes they were great books that just got like hidden under the like they just weren't popular. And that was also helpful to be like, oh, like you can make something great that is just misunderstood. You can make something terrible that like is understood by everyone.
Right. I mean, there's so many mainstream things out there that are just not good.
Right.
And there's so many quality pieces of work that just either they didn't have the marketing behind them or whatever, didn't reach the right audience for it, that are just in the bargain bins, and poor bastards are just sitting without a paycheck and hopefully making books though.
But all those people are also like they're the language. Like they're the language that we speak in as comic book creators. Like, we speak in reading Y the Last Man, Preacher, or like whatever the thing is. Like if you haven't read those cornerstone pieces, it's like, oh well, you're not fluent in the language. Like I'm not saying you have to read every book that comes out. I certainly don't, but like you have to at least understand the bedrock. Like I'm not a huge Alan Moore fan, but like I sure read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and From Hell and all of those like seminal works, because like that is what makes like comics. Like that is the things that make comics. Like these are the influences that people are using, and if you know those, you can go to Neil Gaiman and be like, oh yeah, I see what you did, and it's very interesting, like this thing, but it's just in a tradition of this. And when someone comes up to your table and goes, what's your book like? You can say these two books. And more importantly than just we as creators have a language of comics, like fans have a language of comics. Like if they come to your table or they find you online and you're not reading comics, like what are you going to talk about? Like they're excited about comics. Like you're a comic creator. Like you have to be reading and nerding out about comics more than they are, because like that's why they're going to get excited about your work.
That's a great point. We've been talking a little bit over an hour. I want to end it with a few more quick questions. Comic conventions. One quick tip. What would you say to somebody, a must-have or a must-do or a must-pack to bring with you for a convention? I ended with pack, but not necessarily something to pack. A must-do. Yeah, hydrate, sanitize.
Hydrate yourself. Bring food, like food and water at the table. Never. Always be drinking and eating something. Set alarms. Make sure you are hydrated and fed, because it is way too easy to not have either of those things. And it is not a good idea in the middle of the day at like 12 o'clock to have to go out and get food.
Right. Stay healthy, stay hydrated, watered and fed. Get sunlight if you can sneak out for a second, although that never happens. I threw my other card down. I had one more question. I think it was mailing lists. I think it's known that you have an epic mailing list of several hundred, not 100,000, but 10,000 some odd folks on your mailing list. I think you've been
Yeah.
working at it hard for a while, and I think you go into great detail in one of your courses on how to do it. But a new creator is looking to start from the bottom up. What is a quick piece of advice that you would give them?
Be consistent. Be consistent and do it. Like, you're not going to write a good mailing list email like quickly. You're not going to write it in the first 5 or 10. Come from the heart and just write. And every time you go to a convention, or every time you go, like, have something to exchange for an email. Because
a sticker for an email, something quick.
Sticker or a free ebook or something, whatever it is,
nice.
for for getting on your email list. Because if you want to make a career of this that is not tied to conventions, you need people's emails in order to reach them outside of the convention scene. Additionally, when you're doing a Kickstarter, make sure at the end of it you always ask if you can add them to your mailing list. Like when you're join other promotions. I use a company called BookFunnel to have a bunch of free books on there, so I can just join promotions easily. And also there's a company called Story Origin, and I think it's called Prolific Works now. Just like all sorts of ways to make your mailing list, but in the same exact way that you doesn't matter how great you tell your fans if you're not making something that is incredible for them. Like if the mailing list is not a good experience, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I just saw someone today, literally right before I came on here, say, if I got emails twice a week, I would unsubscribe. And I was like, really? Okay, so let's walk you through an exercise. Like, your favorite brand in the whole world, like the thing that literally always love, like is releasing 2 products in 1 week. They email you twice in 1 week with 2 amazing, incredible products. You really are telling me that after the second email, you would unsubscribe? No, you would go and you would buy the second thing because you would be excited. And everyone assumes that like people don't want to get mail, but every human being in the entire world is looking forward to one piece of junk mail. Everyone, whether it's Walmart, whether it's the coupons at Walmart or the next big sale from Amazon Prime Day, whatever it is, like there's somebody, every single person is looking for one piece of mail you would consider junk. And in the same way, you can be that thing for people. Not everyone, maybe not even a lot of people, but like my goal and the goal of a mailing list should be to be the email. You have to assume
be someone's junk.
Make sure. Or you have to go into it assuming that like you are the email that everyone looks forward to. Otherwise, why would they be there? And now your goal as the email...
And why would you want to write an email? I mean, if you don't have
right.
that mindset going in, you're going to be demoralized writing the fucking email.
And that is why everyone is demoralized wriing emails. So
right.
Like,
so
the biggest mindset shift... And the mindset shift you should make is they would unsubscribe if they didn't want to be here. They would email me and tell me to quit emailing them all the time, or like they would unsubscribe, or they would not open my emails. But like if you're getting emails open, if you're getting email opens above 20%, if you're getting click-throughs at like 1%, and if your unsubscribes are less than 0.5%, no, that's not it. If your spam is less than 0.5%, then like you're doing okay. So like people will mark you as spam or unsubscribe.
Right.
And so you have to assume that the people that are there want to be there. And now, and if you make that assumption or want to hear from you, now you have to make your email something that is worth them reading, worth them opening. I have one of my fans tells me all the time, she's like, I don't always read your emails, but I always open them because I stay on your list because I love your emails so much. And so like that involves like, building a voice and becoming a better writer and saying things that are meaningful and like giving people insight into your work and launching books because they're there to buy books from you. Like they like your work, so they're there to buy your books. And like, so you should not fear like buying, like selling. And that's the last thing I will say about this topic is a lot of people hate their mailing list because they don't ever sell things to their mailing list. And so, of course, their mailing list is going to be like a waste of time because they don't sell to it. And so it is nothing but like another thing that they have to do. But I promise you, if you start selling to your list, you start seeing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars roll in from them, as I have in my career. It no longer becomes a like chore. It becomes a thing that I look forward to doing because I know that I will be making money from it.
Right, and I think it's an art in and of itself, right? Finding your voice on having it come across via a mailing list.
Well, and just not just all promotion, like all promotion.
Oh, sure.
It's because that's one thing, and like a lot of people aren't good at promotion because they don't find their voice for promoting their work. Like they're
Right.
like I love all of my comic friends, but they are garbage at like promoting their work when their Kickstarter's in there. Like it's always just pledge now, or like
Right.
we're still looking for pledges, or like I'm sorry for like posting this thing, but like the true art of promotion and why people back is every time you hit them, there has to be new information that they are receiving, and if they are receiving new information with each drip that you do, then you can hit them as often as you have new information to share with
Right.
them. And sometimes
New
the
content.
information is, hey, we're 25% of goal. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm assuming you didn't go to this page yet, so like the page yet. So like, here's the first 5 pages of the book. Look at how awesome they are. Hey, look, here's Camry, or here's the artist of the book. Oh, look, here's the creator talking about it. Oh, here's the backstory of the book. Like, here's you know, why it's important now. Here's like why you would love it. Here are my influences. Like I just named like 10 things that literally a campaign of 30 days.
Yeah.
Like that's 10 days right there. You know, I
think
mean,
you almost
literally,
have to
oftentimes
have-
what I
You
often
have to
do is
plan
I'll
your
go.
weekly.
Oh,
You
sorry.
go ahead.
Oftentimes what I'll do is I will literally just take pieces of my Kickstarter page
Yeah.
and I will paste them into an email. Because like I'm assuming they haven't read all of the email, or they haven't read the whole Kickstarter page, or they probably haven't gone to it at all. So like I literally will spend a week in like the 5 or 6 sections of my campaign. I will literally just spend a week every day talking about one aspect from the Kickstarter page, and there's another 5 days.
Right, you have to find things to talk about, both leading up to the campaign and then during the campaign.
Yeah,
You have to have this content almost planned out weekly, what you're going to talk about. Maybe once a week you drop like a powerful image or something, or a new cover leading up to the campaign. But like you mentioned, slowly releasing new content, not just whatever quotes you pulled from folks who are doing it poorly.
Sure. I mean, you can
Come
do a cover.
stronger.
Right. I mean, you can do a cover reveal. There's one
Whatever
day.
it is, yeah.
You
Whatever
do
it is.
you can do like a blurb reveal. There's another day.
Right.
You can do a link to like go and follow the campaign. You can do a preview page. You can follow the preview page of the page and like have them look. I do that every time.
Yeah.
You can do here another week. Here are your stretch. Here are the early bird perks that we're doing for this campaign. I mean, there's 5 weeks right there. Then you can do like, hey, the campaign's coming in a week. There's another week, and then like the thing launches, and like you do your launch slate of emails, and like I do it the same way every single time, a little bit differently if it's a product that they don't know. So like Black Market Heroin has a little bit longer of a build up because no one knows what that is, but like Cthulhu and Ichabod and God's Verse, like people on my list are pretty well versed in that, so like I don't need quite like a month and a half to get them ready. But yeah, I mean, it's they are interested in your work. That's why they're there on your mailing list. That's why they're on your social media. But they're not just going to say my book is launching, go buy it. Like you have to still build the hype. There's a reason why new movies have like the trailer launches and the sneak peeks and the behind, like they know how to do it to build hype. And in the same way, you have to be like, hey, you know, here's where this book comes from. Hey, here's this cover. Here's how I found Camry. Here's how I did this. Here's how I do that. Here's the blurb. Here's the 5 pages. Like, hey, here's this really cool print that I have. Oh, here's this cool. Here's what the pin is like. And like every time you do that, you're going to get more people involved and get the people who are involved more interested. But they
Yeah.
will not be interested if you just say, buy my book, buy my book. Oh, we need help, buy my book, buy my book.
Yeah.
And they will not be interested if all you do is email them when your campaign launches. Just won't. There's just too many other. Maybe I could do that. And I'm not saying that as like a big, but like I've done this for a long time. Like people really love Ichabod. Like there's already like a fan base for Cthulhu is Hard to Spell. Like maybe I could go a month or 2 months or 3 months without like emailing them to remind them, hey, I matter, and like remember you like who I am. But I would never do that because I know that like who am I? Like they have Neil Gaiman and Scott Snyder and friggin' Black Widow and all these other things that are gonna be like moving their attention. So I would never want to wait 3 months without talking to them because you have to like all the success of all launches is what you do between launches. Like that is what it's
Right.
just like I always say a campaign is won or lost before it even you hit launch. And in the same way, like everything from finding an artist to writing the script to getting the cover to building the hype to getting the variants to getting like all of that is how you win Kickstarter or how you win a launch. The like the launch itself is just 30 days. Like it's just now we're 30 days. Like anyone can just I could go and launch nothing like tomorrow and be like, hey, let's launch. Like it is just the process of counting down from the beginning to the end. Like that process is the same. The what makes it different is all of the things you've built up between them, including and most importantly the hype of fellow creators and fans of your previous work, and new fans, and find ways to get new fans in.
Wow. Great advice. Great advice. I definitely want to talk to you again. I don't think we hit many business topics. I think you brought it up before that I think you said people see you as more of a business guy or you like talking more about the business side. We touched on a few things, so I definitely want to talk to you another time, have you back on and go down that rabbit hole. I'm sure people would dig it. Russell Nohelty, I appreciate your time. Tell folks where they can find you.
You can go to WrestleNulty.com, and if the campaign is live, it will literally just redirect you to my new campaign.